Sit back and relax, educate and inform. Cozy conversations, drop the knowledge that's for real. Ndigo Studio, always in the know. With Hermine Hartman, you'll be enlightened. Up and up we grow.
Welcome to Ndigo Studio. We've got a fashion show today, and we're going to be talking to one-on-one, just he and I, to Mr. Marcellas Reynolds. He's from Chicago, and he left Chicago as a model, went overseas, lives in LA, but he came home because he's got something wonderful. He's got a wonderful project, Supreme Models, and it is a story of 75 models 75 years ago and what they went through, what black models went through to get to where we are today. And he also has a 6-part series that is on YouTube. And we're going to talk to Marcellas today to find out what he did, why he did, how he did, and what the stories really reveal.
Cozy conversations, drop the knowledge that's for real.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home. Hello, Chicago.
Chicago's very own.
Oh, your very own. Okay, you left us though. You went to model and you went overseas first.
Yeah.
That was your first modeling job?
Yeah, the first time I actually went overseas anywhere was as a model. I went to London and I spent a couple of months in London. I spent like 3 months in London. Loved it. Then went to Milan.
Loved it. Really loved it.
Didn't love Milan because I was working almost every day in London because the market is very similar in London to the United States. Went to Milan, didn't work really at all, but loved other aspects of Milan because that's really where like the model culture is. Worked a lot in Paris.
Love that, right?
Loved that, loved Paris.
You doing runway?
I was like a big print boy because I'm actually a little short, and but I had this, like a huge personality and was like a good mover. You know what I mean? Like I was the boy that was like, the photographer was like, jump, and I would be like, what do you mean by jump? Because I can jump like this, or I could really jump, or I could do a run and a jump, like, you know, and I was like the boy that
Say, how much
like
jump
really
do you really want?
Right. Do you want it to be elegant? Do you want it to be sporty? Do you want it to be, you know, I was like that boy. I was like a real mover. The thing that I didn't like about Paris was I didn't speak French. And I'm a very language dependent person. So I hated like not knowing what other people were saying about me, like that kind of thing. But you know, Paris is beautiful, especially back then, you know.
Fabulous.
Yeah, it was like
so let's get
else.
to today. So you decided 8 years ago, am I correct?
Yeah.
That you were going to do a book?
No, in 2011, I came up with the idea for Supreme Models.
How'd the idea emerge?
Having been a model, then transitioning into being a fashion stylist, having worked in Chicago in retail, I had this love of like fashion and women and clothes. And it was almost like all of these like little parts of my life led to this big part of my life. As a fashion stylist, I always collected art books, and I used those as inspiration.
The big picture, tabletop.
Yes, tabletop books. So the big Tom Ford book, and the Chanel book, and all of the Dior books, and the YSL book. And in 2011, a book came out called Vogue Faces of Beauty. It was oversized, it was super expensive, and I got it. Came to my house at like 4 in the afternoon, Amazon dropped it off. Ripped into it, read it from cover to cover, and there were only 2 black models included in that book that had 100 models in it. And it was Iman and Naomi Campbell.
Wow.
And it was a really bad photo of Iman, and I was incensed. So if you go on Amazon to this day, there's a review that I wrote at 2 o'clock in the morning where I was like, I gave it 1 star, and if I could have given it 0 stars, I would have given it 0 stars. But I was like, where is Tyra Banks? Where is Veronica Webb? Where is Leah Kabidi? Where is Alec Weck? And that was the moment I was like, are there any black model books? And there weren't, not art books. There were some books that told the story about individual black models or there was a wonderful book by a model named Barbara Summers or Barbara Sumners, but it was like a, it was more like a novel that had some pictures in it. It wasn't an oversized tabletop book.
So your story, you go back to black models and you tell the story of when they had to mix their own makeup. There wasn't even a makeup for them. They had to do their own hair on the runway. And you talk about a lady that we would be remiss if we didn't talk about, Eunice Johnson, and what her contribution was to the fashion world, to the model world. Talk about Eunice Johnson for me, what she meant to, what she, as a Chicagoan, Paris, on the runway. What did the Ebony Fashion Fair really, really mean?
Well, you can't talk about black models without talking about Ebony Magazine, because Ebony Magazine really created the need for black models. Before that, there was no such thing really as a black model, because magazines, white magazines, didn't have to cover black people.
And what year? What year
we're
we
talking
talking
1945.
45, okay.
So when John H. Johnson created Ebony Magazine, he created a need for the black model to be represented in his magazine. So you have these wonderful models like Ophelia DeVore and Sarah Lou Harris and Dorothea Towles, but they were like light-skinned, almost white, could pass for white. Ophelia DeVore went to the Vogue fashion school and they thought she was white. They thought she was like Italian. And she didn't tell them because she wanted to go to model school. But she was one of the first people to start her own modeling agency, and she helped create what we now know as like black modeling. Then you have somebody like Helen Williams in the 50s, who was the first dark-skinned model to book major campaigns. Then you have the 60s, and that's when it got really exciting for black models.
So we're looking at color. We're really, so it's not just black models coming into the field, but we're looking at skin color.
We're looking at color, and the documentary really tackles that, because when Ebony started, it created a need for black models, but they were light-skinned models.
So how black do you really want it?
Right. You know what I mean? And of course, it's like the cultural norms of the time. It's like, think about it, it's the 1940s, and people are, servicemen are coming back from the war, and there is this sort of like new black renaissance that's happening, but we're still America, and it's still like the lighter you are, the more you're, the closer to white you are, the more beautiful you're considered.
And it was also about hair.
And it was also always about hair. So it really wasn't until like the 60s when you had the Black is Beautiful movement where we started talking about you know, natural hair and dark skin and what black people sort of really look like when they weren't bleaching their skin or perming their hair. And what was really beautiful about that time was that was right around the time that Eunice Johnson started going to Paris. And she was buying clothes that would appear in Ebony Magazine.
That was Yves Saint Laurent.
She was doing Yves Saint Laurent. She was sitting front row next to the richest of the rich. And the designers were letting her sit front row because she had money. They weren't giving Eunice clothes.
Oh, no.
Eunice was buying those clothes. She was
buying her clothes.
She was buying those designer outfits. And it was hard for her because there were some shows she couldn't go to, even though she had the money to afford those
There
clothes.
were some designers that didn't let her in the showroom.
There were some designers that did not let her in their showroom. But then there were designers like Yves Saint Laurent that allowed her to like come and sit at front row at the show. And there's these wonderful pictures. I think even in the documentary, there she is in the front row. Only black face in the room, but there she is.
With a big checkbook.
Yes.
She could write the check.
And she bought those clothes, put them in the magazine. She did articles in Ebony talking about European fashion. She really educated black people about the couture, about high-end fashion. And that inspired her to do Ebony Fashion Fair.
And out of Ebony Fashion Fair, the models didn't have makeup. That inspired a new makeup line.
That inspired a makeup line. Pat Cleveland in the documentary was one of the, she started her career as a model. Now she's like a legend. She started her career as a model in doing Ebony Fashion Fair.
Cozy conversations, drop the knowledge that's for real. Ndigo Studio.
How dependable is your power? As dependable as 2 a.m. wake-up calls, Grandpa showing up an hour early, and perfect timing. Because you can count on ComEd to keep the lights on and keep you informed. so your electric service is as dependable as sleepless nights.
The sun has risen, the pride has returned, and the time has come to join the circle of life at The Lion King.
Now playing at the Cadillac Palace Theater through January 14th. Get tickets at BroadwayandChicago.com.
Our goal is to see you become effective leaders
to support your passions
and help your community. So whether you're pursuing an undergraduate degree or transferring from another school, our goal
is to see you accomplish yours.
Don't miss your chance to see The Lion King, one of the most awe-inspiring productions ever brought to life on stage.
Now playing at the Cadillac Palace Theater through January 14th. Get tickets at BroadwayandChicago.com.
Cozy conversations, dropping knowledge that's for real.
One of the things that was just a highlight in the documentary is you talk about Versailles. Yes. In Paris, and how that really not only changed, well, it changed the game for black models, but it changed the game for fashion. Talk about that for me.
So the Battle of Versailles was actually, people think that the Battle of Versailles happened in the 60s. It actually happened in the early 70s, but it was an offshoot of like all the successes, sort of the 60s. So you have these designers on Fifth Avenue, the American designers that really used black models as runway girls because black models could walk. Black models brought their dresses to life. So you have Stephen Burrows, who was a black designer, and you have Oscar de la Renta, and you have Anne Klein, and you have, of course, Halston. And most of Halston's girls, his cabine, which was a collection of models, were black girls, you know, like Pat Cleveland. And he, later on, he used Iman. But he was using a model named Beth Ann Hardison as well. And Beth Ann is a really pivotal person in fashion. She started her career working in the shops on Fifth Avenue. And Willie Smith, legendary designer, would see her walking to work. And you know, Beth Ann would have on her outfit and she'd be moving down the streets of New York on her way. And he would be like, who is that girl? Where is she? Do you know the black girl with the short hair? Finally, somebody introduced them, watching that movement. And he made her a model. He was like, I want you to show my clothes. If I have to go show my clothes at a department store or to a buyer or to the press, I want you to be the model. He made Beth Ann a model. And she was one of the models that went to the Battle of Versailles. And so it's 5 European designers versus 5 American designers, and it was really a fundraiser to restore the Palace of Versailles, which had like fallen into disrepair after decades, after, you know, hundreds of years. And it was supposed to be a showcase for both of the American designer who did sportswear, and it was supposed to be a showcase for the Parisian designers. But somewhere along the line there, the Parisian designers were like, why are they even coming here? They can't compare to us. And you know, the American designers were like, all right, then it's a battle. And the difference was, the main difference was that the American designers bought a bunch of black models, because that's what Fifth Avenue was. It was like white models and black models on the runway together doing the shows. And the Europeans, of course, were all white models. The Europeans went first. They showed their collections. Boring. 2 hours, 2.5 hours, you know, of like, you know, I think that at one point there was like a break where like there were ballet dancers. And then when the Americans came on, it was about fashion. It was a fashion show. You know, you got like Beth Ann strutting, you got Pat Cleveland doing her thing, all her twirls, you got Bonnie Blair, you got all these wonderful Fifth Avenue girls working that organza and bringing those gowns to life. And literally Beth Ann says that within the first scene, because there were 5 different designers with show, there's a moment where she strikes a pose, and all of a sudden all the people in the audience throw their like programs into the air, and then it's just like applause and stomping, and the black designers knew that they won. Yeah.
model stand.
So black models knew that they won the show for the Americans. Let's be very clear about that.
So that's the runway,
That's
right?
the runway.
So then what happens after they come back is now the magazines begin to look differently.
Right.
At the black model.
So there was always, I say this in the documentary, during every decade from the 1940s with the advent of Ebony magazine, there have always been black models. Trends of the time sort of define how many black models we see, how much they work, and the amount of black models working. The 50s brings in Helen Williams, and that brings in like a more diverse definition of beauty with darker skinned models as well. Then you've got the 60s where you've got Donyelle Luna, who becomes the first black woman on the cover of British Vogue, who's from Detroit.
Looks like an Italian.
Looks Italian. People kind of diss Donyelle because she was sort of, they say she denied her blackness.
She was exotic.
She was exotic. And that's what happens. They always cast the black model as exotic. You know what I mean? And so she had to play that exotic thing up to like work. You know what I mean? But you can't take away her impact. She was the first black woman on the cover of American's Harper's Bazaar, which was major, because back then Harper's Bazaar was as big as Vogue. And she was the first black woman on the cover of British Vogue. And that was 8 years before American Vogue put Beverly Johnson on its cover.
As the first.
As the first black model to appear on the cover of American Vogue. That's one of the things about the documentary that I'm a stickler for. I'm a stickler for facts. I'm a stickler for history. And so people will say, oh, Beverly Johnson was the first black woman on the cover of Vogue. She was the first black woman on the cover of American Vogue. She's actually the third black woman to cover any Vogue. The first was Donyelle Luna, who was on the cover of British Vogue. And so you can't take away that person's legacy and that person's history. Because when Donyelle appeared on the cover of Vogue in the UK, it caused advertisers to pull their advertising. You know what I mean? But she did that. She did that. When she appeared on the cover of American Harper's Bazaar, the people that put her on the cover lost their jobs. You know what I mean?
So it was revolutionary.
It was revolutionary. And somebody took the hit to make that happen. You know, so I think, yeah, we can diss Donyelle, but she was playing the game. If you're gonna exalt me for being this exotic beauty and I need to make money, I'm gonna play that up. And she was one of the first models, period, of any color to become a film actress. And she was Fellini's muse, and she was a Andy Warhol girl. You know what, in that period, one of my favorite models, and I don't think people understand this, and she's a Chicagoan, Daphne Maxwell Reid, who black people know as light-skinned Aunt Viv, which I hate but you know, she famously replaced Vivian, the first Aunt Viv. It was like the dark-skinned woman went to the kitchen and out came the light-skinned Aunt Viv. But Daphne Maxwell Reid, who people know for being the second Aunt Viv on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, she was the first black woman to appear on the cover of Glamour magazine.
Cozy conversations, drop the knowledge that's for real. Ndigo Studio.
How dependable is your power? As dependable as 2 a.m. wake-up calls. Grandpa showing up an hour early. And perfect timing. Because you can count on ComEd to keep the lights on and keep you informed. So your electric service is as dependable as sleepless nights.
The sun has risen, the pride has returned, and the time has come to join the circle of life at the Lion King.
Now playing at the Cadillac Palace Theater through January 14th. Get tickets at BroadwayandChicago.com.
Our goal is to see you become effective leaders
To support your passions
and help your community. So whether you're pursuing an undergraduate degree or transferring from another school, Our goal
Our goal
Our goal
is to see you accomplish yours.
Don't miss your chance to see The Lion King, one of the most awe-inspiring productions ever brought to life on stage.
Now playing at the Cadillac Palace Theater through January 14th. Get tickets at BroadwayandChicago.com.
Cozy conversations, drop the knowledge that's for real.
So here we are today. We're picking up a magazine of Elle, Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, Vanity Fair. Not so unusual to see a black model. One of the things Beyonce did when she was on Vogue is she was like, yes, I'll be on Vogue, but my terms are I bring the photographer. I control the styling. Talk about what that really means.
Well, I always say that the black model is the vanguard for change. Whatever is like happening in the bigger culture, the black model becomes like the example of that. And that's what we're talking about. In the 40s, it's light-skinned models, then it's dark-skinned models, because that was happening in the culture. Black people were reclaiming their idea of beauty. They were taking control of their narrative, right?
Big naturals.
Right, and afros, and I'm not relaxing my hair, and I still want to be able to go to work and wear my natural hair, that sort of thing. And so it happens, I always say it happens in fashion first, because it happens in advertising, because if advertisers can make money off of the black consumer and off the black image, here we go. And that's sort of what we're seeing. That's sort of what we're seeing now, is like with the advent of Black Lives Matter and the George Floyd murder, and then the pandemic, and we really started having these conversations on social, and the advent of social media. That really changed the game for the black person, I think, and the black model, because we could literally, as something was happening, we could actually show it to and it could become viral. Instantly. So now we're in this place where it's like black models and their stories matter, because the black model could actually go to the public and tell her story. It wasn't hidden as it's been in the past decades.
So talk about the images. So because with the black model, the image changes. The image, the face, like you say, it really becomes the face, pop culture of black folk. Talk about those images, what those images meant.
I think if we're going to talk about the images, I think you have to talk about sort of the big moments in modeling. And they become, to me, the big moments in this fashion Black American history. So of course we're going to talk about Donya Luna on the cover of British Vogue. We're going to talk about Daphne on the cover of Glamour. There's a black woman that was on the cover of Carol Labrie. Carol Labrie on the cover of Italian Vogue in 1971. Then we're of course going to talk about Beverly Johnson's legendary American Vogue cover in 1974. We have to talk about the arrival of Iman in 1975. But we get into the 80s and we get into like Naomi Campbell, the second, Naomi. Being the first black woman on the cover of Paris Vogue. And that was only because she complained to Yves Saint Laurent about not being on the cover of Vogue, and about all her little white friends getting. I love this story. It's Naomi Campbell is like a teenager, and Linda Evangelista and Christy Turlington are her friends, and they're getting covers every 2 minutes. And Linda goes to Yves Saint Laurent. She's like, I'm not getting covers like they are. And Yves Saint Laurent's like, I got you, girl. So he calls up Paris Vogue, and he's like, if you don't put Naomi on the cover, I'm pulling my advertising. And they put Naomi Campbell on the cover.
God, that'll get you a little attention.
That'll get you a little attention. So kudos for Naomi to walking over and saying to Yves, being able to communicate what she wanted. And kudos to Yves Saint Laurent for being powerful enough to say she deserves a cover, and kudos to Paris Vogue for being like, we're not just gonna put anybody on the cover, and so if you have to put someone, it's Naomi.
Are the Brits, the European magazines maybe ahead of America?
Italian Vogue did an all-black issue in 2008, and it was revolutionary. But there are so many problems with that issue. So you do an all black issue and you do 4 different covers with black models on the cover. Great. Every editorial in the magazine is black. But the next step that they needed to take was putting all black ads in that magazine.
Problem.
So as you flip through the magazine, the real money in fashion is the model that's in the advertising, in the makeup campaign. Those editorial girls are maybe getting $200, $300, $400 for that day. But that model that's in the advertising, 10,000, 20,000, 25, 50. If it's a makeup campaign, it could be, you know, $1 million contract. So you give us the all-black Vogue with these wonderful issues of editorials, but the real money is in the advertising. And when you flip through those pictures, that's where the real money is, and those are all black models. So it would have been interesting if that editor, Franca Sozani, had taken that extra step and said to all the advertisers, I need you to shoot black models for your ads for this issue. So now you've got Vogue Italia, the all-black issue, which becomes their biggest selling issue ever. They have to reprint it multiple times because it is flying off the stands. The next month, they go right back to business as usual.
There you go. So
and there's a white model on the cover.
Special issue only. One time.
One time.
That's called the Black History Month syndrome. Right? So, okay, so tell me, define for me style. What is style?
Oh my God, that's such a big question. You know, in a previous life, we talked about that. I used to be a fashion stylist. Style for me is how an individual chooses to present themselves.
Okay.
You can take 10 people and give them the same 10 pieces and accessories, but you're going to get those 10 different pieces or accessories are going to be worn a different way. And that's style. Style is not going to the department store and seeing a head-to-toe Ralph Lauren look and buying that head-to-toe Ralph Lauren look. It's about taking particular pieces and putting them together and showing your point of view.
Thank you for doing what you did. Thank you for the book, and thank you for the documentary, and thank you for having them at the same time, because it is just a huge effect when you read the book, which I did, and then look at all 6 episodes of the on YouTube of the documentary. And if you don't get it from that impact, then shame on you. And on that note, we've got to go. Thank you, Marcellas, for being with us. Thank you for the book, and thank you for talking about black models. It is just so insightful, so historical, and so interesting, and I know you've got more to come, so we're going to bring you back. I'm Hermine Hartman with Ndigo Studio, and thank you for watching.
Sit back and relax, educate and inform. Cozy conversations, dropping knowledge that's for real. Ndigo Studio, always in the know. With Hermine Hartman, you'll be enlightened. Up and